Hafa-day and welcome to this video, which will be on freshman ecology, the ecological pyramids, as well as a little bit about the levels of organization of the biosphere. In our last video, we talked about food chains. Here we're going to expand on that knowledge just a little bit. But first we're going to recap. So if we have our typical food chain, we always ultimately have started from our sun. Our sun gives us the energy and it goes down onto our grass, and our grass photosynthesizes, and that provides the basic chemical components that all organisms will need. When we write our food chain, we will place the arrow going in the direction of the organism that's eating it. So the grass will go into our little grasshopper, and then the grasshopper will be eaten by, here we have some kind of little mouse, rodent type thing, and then the mouse will be eaten by the snake. And here we can see our producer level. I'm going to change here, producer level. Then we have our first consumer, our second consumer, and our third consumer. And we could possibly have a fourth tertiary consumer, but we're going to stick to this for right now. Now when we have this food chain, the organism before will have a certain amount of energy, and then it will eat into that. And we're going to expand on what exactly happens with that in our next section. One of the ways I like to best describe the ecological pyramids is to use the term Biome Bucks. So here we have our plants, and the plants are going to be given energy in the form of radiant energy from the sun, and they're going to convert that into chemicals by photosynthesis. So they are going to receive 10,000 biome dollars. Okay? Then those plants are going to be eaten by the insect or the grasshopper, and that insect is going to eat 1,000 biome dollars, and that was what it is going to receive from the plants. And the insect will be eaten by our rodent or our mouse, and it will receive from the insect 100 biome dollars. And our snake, which was our tertiary consumer, is going to receive from the mouse 10 biome dollars. So if we think of it in terms of these biome dollars, we can see that between each level we have 90% will be gone, and only 10% of the original energy will be passed on to the next feeding level. And we can see that here in this example. Now 10% is not the exact figure. We just use a 10% as a generic, easy kind of thing to remember. The important thing, of course, is that most of the energy that is there will not be passed on. Only 10% will be able to be passed on. So we see that 10% of the energy will be passed on. So what happens to that other 90%? Well, of that 90%, most of it is going to be used in the form of metabolism. Those insects, rodents, snakes, all need to carry out metabolism within their cells. Their cells are constantly doing chemical reactions, and they need that energy to fuel their cells. The other thing that happens is, because of that metabolism, it is going to be lost to the atmosphere in the form of heat. As your cells metabolize, there is a lot of heat given off, and we can tell that when we sit next to people. We can feel how warm they are. Sometimes we even know they're there just by that presence. So we're going to see most of that being dissipated off in the form of heat. Additionally, some of that will be waste material, and that waste material will leave the particular organism, and the decomposers will usually take care of that. And we also have some, in addition to the waste that comes out of the organism, we have some materials such as hair, fur, bones sometimes, that are not ingested by the organism that's eating it. They will leave that behind. And again, those are kind of materials that the decomposers will take care of, but they won't initially be passed on from that feeding trophic level. In your book, Prentice Hall Biology, where I got this picture from, they discuss 3 types of ecological pyramids. The first type is the energy pyramid, and here we can see the chemical, the lighter chemical energy coming in, and we have the different percentages by the producers, the first level consumers, the second level, and the third level consumers. This can be similar to the previous example using the Biome Bucks. The second type of ecological pyramid is the biomass pyramid, and the biomass will be very similar, but instead of looking at it in terms of energy level, we'll be looking at it in either grams or kilograms of material, biomass, biological mass. So here we can see we have 5,000 grams of grain, and that will support 500 grams of chicken, which will support 50 grams of human tissue. So one of the things that we can learn from this is that we, in our normal state, will eat approximately 10 times our body mass in food each year. And that number can vary depending on our lifestyle and if we're in the process of growing or if we're really active. But that's something that we can look at in the terms of biomass pyramid. And our third type of pyramid is called pyramid of numbers. And the pyramid of numbers is just that. It's going to look at the numbers of organisms. So if we have one hawk, how many snakes? How many of our primary consumers? And how many plants or producers will be needed to support those types of things? So scientists, ecologists, as they're studying an area, may use one of these 3 pyramids in studying the area to see how good it is in terms of the food chain and the food web and what's available and is there enough for sustainability for a particular spot. In our book, we saw that it was pyramid in shape. However, when we draw it now, we tend to make it a little bit more stair-steppy. So our producers would be here and on the bottom, and will be longer, and then we have our first consumers, and then we would have our second consumers, and again we would go back up to our third consumers, and we see that instead of it being a pyramid like that, we can see that it has a little bit of a stair-step nature to it. And that's just to make it a little bit more clear that only about 10% is being passed on and roughly 90% will be lost. And so this is the shape that you may see more current ecological pyramids in. The second section that I wanted to talk about today was the levels of organization. In order to understand relationships within a biosphere, ecologists ask questions about these organisms, and when they're studying a particular area, it may go from the simple individual to an entire area or maybe even the whole biosphere. So we're going to look at these levels of organization. In looking at this picture from our Prentice Hall Biology book, we begin our levels of organization with the individual. So we have one particular member of a species. Now, a species is a group of organisms that are so similar to one another that they can breed and produce fertile offspring. So we have our species. So sometimes we will look at a particular individual, and sometimes we will look at that group of species that is there. And if we look at that group of species, then we will be studying the population. So the population here, we're looking at all of that particular species in an area. We might be looking at what they do, what they eat, how they're being affected by a component of that ecosystem. Now, the next level of organization is a community, and a community is all of the populations in a particular area. So we would be looking at all of these living species, and that includes the animals as well as the plants in a particular area. Then the next thing we'll look at is the ecosystem. Now, the ecosystem, we not only look at the living organisms, the biotic components, all of the living things, biotic. And we also will be looking at abiotic components, so things such as the water, such as the terrain, the rocks, what kind of things are in that area that are non-living. Then our next group is biomes, and biomes are a group of ecosystems that have the same climate and similar dominant communities. And our biggest group is the biosphere, and the biosphere is the area from about 11 kilometers below the Earth's surface to 8 kilometers above the Earth's surface where life currently is known to exist. So that's a basic overview of ecological pyramids and levels of organization within our biosphere. And our next section in our next video will look at the cycles of matter and how we have recycling in our biosphere and how it is so important for the survival of our ecosystems. Have a great day.